The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Emily Burgess with the Department of Commerce. If you can hear me, can you do the raise your hand button? Yay. Great. Thank you. So, today we're going to talk about how to use the CHG looker reports that you submit with your invoices to monitor data quality and performance. So, I better show my screen. Okay, there we go. So I know that not all of you access Looker, so maybe somebody else is running these reports and sending them to you, but I'm going to go through really quickly how to run the report on Looker for the people that do that part of the job. So you're going to start in the shared space and then click on WA, and then you're going to click on CHG. And then you have these reports right here. These are your 3 reports that you submit with your invoice. So CHG invoice report active by project type, CHG invoice report system enrollments, and CHG invoice report system exits. So to run the report, you just click on the title. Then you go up to this little gear icon and click download. I would change this to Excel. And you just click download, and then it will download to an Excel file on your computer. So I'd always download the report and not just use what's on your screen, because you're going to get the full results in the downloaded Excel report. Oops. So this is what you're going to come up with. So this is actually the system exits report, and I've changed the names of things. There's no identifying information on here. So I'm just going to go through how I use this to monitor data quality and performance and how you can use it. And if you have questions at any time, you can type them in the box or raise your hand and I will unmute you. Let me check if there's questions. Nope. Okay. So this is the exit report. So this is going to give you information about all of the clients that exited programs in your community in the past month. So I ran it today on September 20th. It gives me information about everybody who exited in August. So I'm going to start by looking at destination, because destination is very important for the exits to permanent housing performance measure. So here is the destination information for everyone who exited. So I'm going to start by looking at data quality. So I'm going to filter, and I'm just going to select responses that are unknown. Client doesn't know, client refused, data not collected, no exit interview completed, and I'm also going to look at other and click OK. So here are all of my unknown or not ideal responses from last month. So there's quite a bit. Of course, this is kind of a fake report, but So something that you would consider when you're looking at these kind of unknown responses is what's the type of project. So let me just look at emergency shelters. So I have a lot of unknown responses in my emergency shelters in my community. So something I would look at is what kind of shelters are they? If they're a drop-in or night-by-night shelter, I would expect more unknown destinations. And for shelters in general, I would expect more unknown destinations than I would for perhaps a rapid rehousing program or a transitional housing program. So some of these might be real. People do leave shelters and we don't know where they go. So some of this might be totally valid. If you have a shelter in your community where you're seeing a rate of unknown responses that you think is a little bit more than would be normal, then you should follow up with that subgrantee to see what's going on. It could be the HMIS user entering things improperly, or it could be a system design issue where they're not actually collecting the data. So it could be addressed in several different ways depending on what the issue is. So now I'm going to look at my rapid rehousing programs. See, when I filter to rapid rehousing programs, I still have my filter on to look at the destination responses. There are much fewer, which is what we expected. We don't expect a lot of unknown destinations in rapid rehousing programs. So that's good. This makes sense to me. If you see the rapid rehousing programs in your community have a lot of the unknown exit destinations, that would be something you could follow up with. Well, what's this about? If there's a lot of no exit interview completed, why? People do leave and sometimes we don't know where they go, but in a rapid rehousing program, that would be a lot less likely. So those are the kinds of things you would want to keep in mind when you're looking at data quality for destination. And it's a similar process when you're looking at the entry screen for the residents prior to project entry. So this is the living situation that the person had right before they came into the program. So that's another key data quality element that we look at. So you want to do a similar process with that and see where are those unknown responses. I'm going to get rid of this rapid rehousing filter here. So again, I'm going to look at client refused, data not collected. Those are the only ones that showed up here. And then again, you're going to look at that response in context with the type of project. So data not collected for a residence prior to entry, as you can see on this report, it's happening less frequently than the missing destination. But you shouldn't see this very often, except perhaps in a night-by-night drop-in shelter. That's when I can see it may be more reasonable. But let's look here. We have a prevention program that has some data not collected for the residents prior to project entry. So that seems strange because you would collect that information during your eligibility process. So that would be something I would follow up on if it's not a sort of a drop-in emergency shelter. I would definitely follow up on data not collected for that prior living situation field. Let me see if there are any questions. Doesn't look like it. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. So you want to check the residence prior to project entry, the destination. Those are really important because those are the elements that are called out in the CHG guidelines, and they're also the elements that are reported on the county report card. So in the CHG guidelines, in the section 6.2.2, you can see these are the data quality requirements in the guidelines. And the only elements they're looking at is living situation and destination. And these are the goals, basically. That emergency shelters have the target, the data quality target is lower than in other types of housing projects. And right here is listed what's included as an invalid response. So client doesn't know, client refused, and data not collected are considered invalid responses and will count against data quality. And the data quality on the HMIS data quality on the report card is measured the same way. So if you ever have questions about that, you can refer to the guidelines and also the tooltips in the report card. So other is an interesting response because it doesn't count against data quality, but it does count against your exits to permanent housing. It's not considered temporary or permanent housing. So those other responses, while they're not calculated in data quality, they will count as an unhoused destination in your performance. So I'm going to go back to the spreadsheet. So I hope that these looker reports, that you can use them and also use them to communicate with subgrantees or programs so that they can see their data as well. So when you run this to submit to your invoice, do a quick check of the data quality, and you can send it to subgrantees and your service providers too for them to review. Because it doesn't have personally identifying information, so it's okay to send it. So that would be something I would recommend, especially if you're seeing a lot of missing data. So now I'm going to kind of shift to how you would monitor your performance with these. So this would be kind of like a way to gauge how things are going, and it's not a thorough analysis, but since you're running it monthly, it can kind of give you an idea of how you're going with some of the performance measures, specifically the unsheltered prioritization and exits to permanent housing. So this is the report with all of the project types. I undid the filter for that. So I'm going to look for under residents prior to project entry. I'm just going to look for people coming from a place not meant for habitation. So click. So I can see here 141 of 499 records were coming for a place not meant for habitation. And then I'm also going to look at people who are currently fleeing domestic violence. So I've got 99 out of my almost 500 records are fleeing domestic violence. So those two groups are going to be, that's who would be calculated as an unsheltered household. Of course, this isn't looking back 2 years, so it's not the full measure how we measure it for the performance measures, but it kind of can give you an idea, especially if you track it month to month, of who's entering from place not meant for habitation and who is entering that is currently fleeing domestic violence. So that's something that you can look at to keep track of that. And then to monitor your exits to permanent housing, you would look at the destination field, and you would want to select anything that's considered permanent housing, which would be owned, rentals, staying with family, permanent, staying with friends, permanent. So those would be permanent housing destinations. So my results were 242 out of my almost 500 records went to permanent housing. So that seems pretty great. Of course, I would need to be tracking that over time, but that would give you an idea if you kept track of it month to month. So in the handouts, I have included the System Performance Measure 7 matrix. That is a chart you can use to really to remember which destinations count as permanent housing and which don't. So that's something that you can download to refer back to if you can't remember which ones are permanent and which ones aren't permanent. Something else that's important to check up on is this entry screen housing move-in date. There's also a move-in date field over here. So unfortunately in HMIS, there are several places to enter the housing move-in date, which is kind of annoying, but that's why we have it in 2 places on the report. It looks like in these examples, they're the same, so that's good. But you want to check that out, especially, well, only for your permanent housing type of projects. So I'm going to click all of my PH type of projects, and let's see if they have housing move-in date. So most of them do, so that's great. And the ones that don't doesn't necessarily mean that that is wrong. But like in this example, it seems like this should have a move-in date. Does it over here? Oh, it has it in this field, so that's good. Let's look at one that doesn't have any. So this person came from place not meant for habitation, exited to place not meant for habitation. They don't have a move-in date, which is appropriate because they didn't exit to permanent housing. So that makes sense. So you're not necessarily going to have a move-in date everywhere, but if they are exiting to a housed type of place, even if it's a temporary housing type of place, they should have a move-in date. And there's a handout in the handouts on your, whatever they call this webinar, toolbar or whatever, that's guidance for the rapid rehousing move-in date. So the rapid rehousing move-in date, some people have, we used to enter people into rapid rehousing programs when they started receiving a subsidy, and people should be entered when they start working with the project. And then you can enter the housing move-in date when they move into housing, regardless of whether they receive a subsidy or not. So all of that is outlined in that handout, and you can download that and share with your rapid rehousing providers. So I'm going to check if anybody has hands raised or questions. Okay, so got some hands. Gary, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. Can you hear me, Gary? Gary? Okay. There's a question from Jenny. I'm going to unmute you. Jenny?
Nope, I didn't have a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I was downloading the handout, so I might have inadvertently touched it.
Okay, no problem. Jeff? Jeff, do you have a question?
Nope.
Oh. Okay, I'm gonna put everybody's hands down then. And then if you have a question, please type it into the question box or raise your hand. See if anybody has questions right now. Does not look like it. Okay, so in the handouts, I have basically, well, they're procedures for how to check the things that we're talking about. So if you're not remembering this webinar, you can read these procedures. So we have the system enrollment procedure and a system exit procedure. We have the rapid rehousing move-in date guidance, and then we have the system performance measure 7 matrix. So those are all resources for you to use. And then the last thing I want to do is show you how to quickly do a pivot table, because I don't know the level of Excel expertise in the house. But I'm going to show you how to do a pivot table so you can maybe see things a little bit more easily rather than in just this Excel spreadsheet. So you want to go to Insert up here. Click Pivot Table. It's going to select the range, the entire data set. I'm going to open it in a new worksheet. So just click OK. And then over here is where you build your pivot table. So the first thing you need is something to count. So I always use the client unique identifier, because that will give me a distinct count of people. I'm going to move that down here to values. And then I'm going to look at, I want to look at the information by the project type code. So I'm going to put that in column. No, I'm going to put that in row. You could also put the program name or the agency, however you want to look at it. And then let's just say I want to see kind of a summary of where people are exiting to, so the exit destination. So I'm going to move that down to the rows also, so I can see in a different way where the people are exiting to. So this is all of the exit destinations for the shelters. Here's homeless prevention, and then my other type codes. So then I can look, it's kind of a little bit easier to see than what's going on. So if I just looked at my rapid rehousing projects right here, I can see really quickly that most of them are going to a rental. But 18 of my total 118 went to a place not meant for habitation. So you can see kind of what the top responses are really easily by making a quick pivot table. And then if you want to change it to what, say I want to look at prior living situation instead, I'm just going to get rid of this and move prior living situation there. So now I can see easily where people are coming from. So let's look at prevention. Oh, it looks like a lot of people in my prevention project are coming from jail. So that makes sense with the performance measure to target people exiting institutions. A lot of people are coming from a rental and staying with family and friends. So that all makes sense. So this is a quick way to look at things. If you didn't know how to make pivot tables before, they're super duper easy. And it's really kind of fun if you like that kind of stuff. Okay, I have a question. What about a move-in date for hen? So you would use the same guidelines for hen that you would for any other rapid rehousing project. So the move-in date is required for the PH type projects. So rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, or any of the project type codes with the PH in front of it. So if it's a hen rapid rehousing program, you would expect to see the housing move-in date if in fact they did move into housing. For the hen prevention programs, you don't have to enter the housing move-in date because they're already housed. So that's not something that's collected in prevention projects. I hope that answers your question. But all of the CHG guidelines apply to hen as well, except in the guideline places where there are exceptions that are explicitly spelled out. So as far as data quality and performance, hen is part of it. It's really important that to look at the different project type codes, because that's where you have to look at things differently. So that the project type code is super important for performance measures and also for the data that you have to enter, right? You only have to enter move-in date for certain types of projects. Are there any other questions at this time? Let me see. I'm going to see if there's any hands up. Okay. So, like I was saying, project types are very important. And when it comes to rent assistance programs, it's really important that people get in the right type, because if you enter someone who is housed into a rapid rehousing program, they're basically going to be counted as homeless at project entry, according to the system performance measures reports. The system performance measures reports look at the project types to determine who is housed and who is homeless. And in turn, because we use the federal reporting specifications, we do as well. So it's really important when you're looking at your rent type programs that the right people are in the right program. So I'm just going to click on my prevention and rapid rehousing. And then I would, to monitor that, I would look at the residents prior to project entry. So let's just look at the prevention programs and see what types of prior living situations I have in here. Oh, I have a shelter. Transitional housing. Okay. Well, I don't have that many that raise a concern, but this is a good example. So if someone is coming from an emergency shelter, they're actually going to be should be enrolled in a rapid rehousing program. So people with that literally homeless prior residence are going to go into a rapid rehousing program, while people with the housed type of prior residence are going to a prevention program. So it's another thing you can monitor using this report, because it can impact how your performance looks. Are there any questions? It does not look like it. Nope, there are no questions. Well, that's all I really wanted to go over with everybody today. Just kind of real basic stuff that many of you may have already known, but if you didn't, I hope you got something out of it, and I hope that you can use these to communicate with your subgrantees and monitor performance and data quality a little bit better maybe than you did before. If you ever have questions about this kind of thing, you can email me or you can call me. I can also, if you want to look at the system exits or enrollments for a longer period of time to get a better idea of what's going on, that's something that I can do for you really easily. You just have to shoot me an email. Oh, and Jamie just reminded me that we are going to be running the data for the fourth quarter of the year for the project level dashboards tomorrow. So as many of you know, we have our Tableau site where we have our balance of state project level dashboards here. So right now we have quarters 1 through 3, and we're going to be running quarter 4 tomorrow. And I'm assuming all data is in because it's a quarter lag, but that's going to be happening. And then we will update those reports with fourth quarter data, and we'll also be publishing a new homeless prevention dashboard with all 4 quarters of data. So this webinar is about using the Looker reports, but you can also use the project level dashboards to monitor your data quality and performance, because that's what they are. So I hope you're using those tools as well. And if you have any questions about those, you can email or call me also. So if there are no other questions, and I will hang out for a minute to see if there are, I am going to end the webinar. So I'm going to pause for a minute, see if there's questions. I don't see any questions. Thank you all for attending, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and a great weekend. I will see you hopefully at the forums in October. Okay? Bye.